The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on mandatory transformations for business schools in Mexico from the students and teaching faculty's point of view. And in this webinar, researchers at Anahuac University Mexico have tasked themselves with investigating the behavior of students and teachers that have migrated from a traditional classroom setting to a fully digital learning environment as a result of mandatory social distance policies caused by COVID-19. So with me today, I've got Dr. Pavel Reyes Mercado, Dr. Carla Barajas Portas, and Dr. Guillermo Zamacona Abumrad. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming on board. And I will now hand this over to Pavel to begin the presentation.
Thank you so much. I am really happy to be here with you all to share some insights that we have found so far in this new extraordinariness of the pandemic world. We will share today some insights from two research we have conducted in the previous months to understand how education business has evolved due to this external shock that the pandemic posed. Start with some context to share, but I will not spend so much time with the context, of course, because we all know what have happened all this year long. So just to say that we conducted these two research on the quarantine measures practically all around the world. When we started to think about this research, the world was completely locked down. So we were experiencing completely new conditions, working conditions, teaching conditions, and learning conditions. So just to be more specific on the context, and in the next slide, I'm just trying to. Thank you. So as I was mentioning, practically all countries enacted health policies involving social distance to avoid the further spread of the pandemic, and this provoked a fast-paced migration from the traditional face-to-face activities to digital platforms in home office and teleworking settings. And companies and workers and education alike all became aware of these video conferencing platforms as an emergency tool to maintain business continuity. And education was, I think, one of the first industries affected, and institutions all around the world started to teach online, something that was unthinkable in the previous months, in the previous years. Was 1 year ago was reality. As universities and colleges started to migrate all operations online, many universities have long relied on the learning management systems. These comprehensive systems that fulfills the functions of information repository, test application, and wikis and discussion boards and etc. Many other functions. But something interesting that is that universities have not relied as much as we would like to in these LMS systems. Some previous research show that students struggle to use, and also instructors are not the early adopters of these systems. So in a sense, these LMS have served just as a information repositories instead of exploiting the fuller range of functionalities. And this has led that started right when the lockdown measures started, some institutions were not completely prepared to switch as smoothly as many other universities already having an LMS platforms. Many other universities had to rely on a bundle of heterogeneous technologies. In a sense, it was a ready-made bundle that we call digital learning environment. And we refer as a digital learning environment, we refer to as a bundle of very different learning tools. For example, video conferencing, there is plenty of offering of tools. Information sharing, we know, I won't go into the details of these technological tools, but there is a lot of offering to share information, to conduct video conferences, and to conduct educational assessments too. So all these context made us think. So what are the pedagogical and technological skills we started to live from since some months ago? So this question was based on what do we need to be ready for. For example, some accreditation standards now maintain that institutions need to develop technological agility and in terms of technology adoption. So in the following two studies, we show how instructors think about these skills, pedagogical and technological skills, and also students. So we offer the two sides of the story to come up with some recommendations at the end of the presentation. So now I will leave the place for Guillermo to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Great, Pavel. Thank you very much. So, well, as Pavel was explaining, we conducted two different researches, one for professors to understand their point of view, how they were perceiving the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic, and one related to the students. I will start by explaining about our first research, well, the first of them, related with teacher self-perception. But before entering into the details, before explaining the details, I want to put a little bit of the background. I want to give you a little background. So it's the middle of the pandemic. We're trying to understand how they are perceiving, how teachers are perceiving the problems, the issues that they are having. And well, a couple of professors comes to us to ask us to conduct a research in order for them to understand what the main issues, the main effects of the pandemic, the main effects that they were having. No? So this is a group of professors. So we decided to create a very extensive, a very large investigation, a very large research divided into different sectors, in different sections. The first one was to understand the problems, to understand their point of view, how they were perceiving the situation, then to create some solutions and make some experiments with those solutions, to understand how the solutions worked and if they were effective or they weren't effective. So with this background, the first part of this investigation, of this research, was a qualitative exploratory research based on a research action methodology. We wanted to understand, to put in action some different solutions, and we used interviews. Okay, we wanted to understand the positive and negative experiences of the Mexican teachers, and we had a first hypothesis, and we thought that the teachers were experiencing different self-perceptions, and that these perceptions were, some of them were positive, some of them were negative, and that they vary between different groups of teachers. The variables that we were that we decided decided as variables to to take in considerations were age, years of experience, gender, type of institution, public or private, and educational level. And we use 115 different interviews. Even though we conducted a little bit more interviews, we only use 115. So the main results. We divided the results in 4 different groups. We found out that there were like actually negative aspects, negative perceptions, and positive perceptions. As well, we find out that there were like generic aspects and specific aspects. So I'm going to talk about first the negative aspects, then the positive aspects, and when I'm explaining each one of them, I am going to divide it into generic and then to specific. So first, the negative aspects, how they were perceiving the negative aspects that the teachers were perceiving about the pandemic. Some of them are we're going to find them a little bit common, we're going to relate with them. Okay, first of all, the technical problems, not only from our teachers, but also from the students. So the technical problems, I mean, we can concur with that. I mean, then the increasing working hours and class planning. No, they all or almost all of the professors that we interview explained that they were experiencing more hours, more time at work. Then the specific ones, and these were only pointed out by 1 or 2 of the groups investigated research. First, pedagogical problems, the lack of knowledge, the lack of strategies to teach. Of course, the second one, the lack of support from schools and parents. They felt isolated, they felt alone, left aside. The third one was more related with the attention of the students, and it was very cool to see. I mean, it's not a quantitative research. I can't. We still have to conduct that. We're conducting that research, but it was very cool to see that the attention span, that the attention problem was very related with age. Again, with the psychological problems, the lack of motivation, the lack of steam, and communication problems. No, some of them were having difficulties with students, with the parents, to communicate with them. So then again, these are the negative aspects. The positive aspects, the generic ones, were that almost all of the professors were experiencing or were positive about learning new tools. So that was something cool. And also they were like very excited about the new possibilities of this paradigm, that the new possible educational business. I mean, they were excited with the new way of discovering new things. Also, the innovation. They felt greater freedom. They felt that they could renew material, that they could start all over again. Now, we heard a lot of times that, I mean, some of these professors felt very cool because they were like experiencing this new freedom, this new liberty to do stuff. Also, greater personalization in relationship. They felt, some of them felt, that they could create greater bond with students. Again, another group also talk about personal growth, about esteem, about feeling satisfied, about feeling heard. And another group about the communication, again, better communication with colleagues. So, as a little conclusion, as a wrap up of this investigation, we could affirm that there are multiple positive and negative effects perceived by our teachers, perceived by the teachers. There are general aspects and there are specific aspects. Again, we could identify a series of variables that suggested that there are differences between the groups investigated. And despite the quantitative analysis that we're conducting, that it's the next stage, the results presented suggest that it is possible that the effects of the crisis, as well as the solutions, will need to be segmented. We have to find out specific solutions for each of the segments that we investigate. So now I will ask Carla to continue with the next part of our investigation.
Okay, hello. Good morning, everyone. We are going to talk about to the next step, that it's going to be about the point of view of the student. And this part of the study, it's about a quantitative method in which we develop a very huge research, obtaining information from 3 different countries. It's not just Mexico. And the reason is because we wanted to obtain different information and contrast them and try to prove if there is difference between 3 different regions that are Mexico, Malaysia, and Spain. Well, the methodology that we use is quantitative, as I say, and we included 2 different models that are used to use that we use. It's like TR, that is Technology Readiness Index, that it's we try to find the impact as the first step of the model in order to understand the change of the perceptions for usage of the technology. We want to understand the behavior and the intention of the of that behavior. And the other model is the user acceptance technology, that we want to try to combine it in the same model in order to, as I say, understand the change and the intention of the change the technology. It's necessary to say that all the changes were not voluntary, they are mandatory. So we are trying to understand the positive and the negative effects on the students. The main objective is to understand the relationship between the different constructs that we are trying to merge, and the variables that we use, as I say, the facilitators and the barriers, considering the technology readiness index. And in the model of the utility, we are using the performance expectancy, effort expectancy, social influence, technology conditions. And we included a different construct that we think could be very interesting, that is the academic engagement. That says that we measure with a couple of items the intention that the students has to change the technology permanently, and if the engagement with their learning skills are more important, or if they affect on the intention of changing that behavior. The sample was formed by 587 observations, and all the data was analyzed with PLSM, that is a structural equation modeling. We selected the partial least squares model as part because we are using all the items as a discrete aspect. These 3 countries that we selected was Mexico, Malaysia, and Spain, in order to show difference between the 3 different regions in the country during the lockdown. So the next, please. According with the results, we are presenting here the model that we conducted, and as you can see, there are many constructs that we are considering. The first part are all the TR technology readiness index, and we demonstrate that all the part of the barriers and all the part of the positive ways impact the users acceptance. The most important thing that we can found in this model is that we can merge 2 different models about technology, that are the technology readiness and the acceptance technology, to understand how students try to use all the technology that are mandatory in this moment. one of the things that we try to test is just the moment in which we were in the lockdown status. So it's not it's in fact it's a cross-sectional study. Not we don't try to compare what's happening before and what's going to be happening then. So our study explained the 45% of the intention for the students to use the technology in terms of their obtain their learning skills, and only the 39% of the behavior. The academic engagement, as I mentioned, was one of the most important links that we try to understand as a moderating effect over the behavior. And this academic learning engagement, we measure it as intention of the students in order to be part of the class in an active way. And all the people that used to be very active, all the people that used to be very compromised with their studies, maintain that that scheme in this mode, in the digital model. No, if we think that all the students are the same during the lockdown than before there used to be, we can find that the academic engagement has a very small effect over the behavior. So we can say that the people that are very compromised with their study still being very compromised, and all the people that maybe are not really compromised are just changing a little bit of their of that attitude over the behavior of usage technology. Okay, and then we are going to talk about the study, the study between Mexico, Spain, and Malaysia. The same model that we show in the previous slide was using all the data together, and we conducted a multi-group analysis in which we tried to understand the difference between the three countries as different regions. We try to understand different aspects, and we found that Mexico and Spain has a very huge similarities. So they are only have many changes. But in the case of Malaysia, we can find that many of the relationships were very significant. We found the very significant differences between Mexico, Malaysia, and Spain, Malaysia. So in Malaysia, in fact, they live almost the same condition of the lockdown during the quarantine. We collect all the data during the same period in which the three countries were completely locked down, and all the studies were completely and absolutely digital. But Malaysia found that the effects of the optimism and the innovation were very different, almost all of them, over the our youthhood different factors. So if you can, the next, please. Considering the academic engagement, we find that for the three countries, there are very many differences, significant differences in the moderating effect of the academic learning engagement over the youth behavior. That's one of the most important discoveries. So it changes very much because of the cultural aspects, and that could be the next step in order to understand how they used to be. Other factor that we can found that is could be very interesting is the facilitating conditions over youth behavior, that we can find that there are differences between Mexico and Spain. That is what almost one of the most important aspects when we are trying to use the technology acceptance over the youth behavior. And finally, our conclusions, according with this study, is that it's possible to prove that the facilitators, the part of the technology readiness that are positive, the optimism, and the innovation, and the barriers are part of the have an impact over the adoption of technology. That is effort expectancy, social influence, facilitating conditions, and expectance performance. And the way in which students are involved in their academic performance, as I say, influences the relationship between the intention and of using the platforms during the lockdown. So that was our quantitative and the point of view of the students. And we are going to continue with Pavel, that is going to share us a couple of conclusion recommendations.
Okay, thank you. So these two studies have provided us with some insights on how students and instructors have perceived this new type of online education, and we would like to wrap up with some suggested practices for instructors and some ways to implement them. So because at the end of the day is what's in it for me? What's in it for me as an instructor or as a dean or as a professor? So we would like to wrap up with three ideas based on the previous insights. So the first one is we found that instructors and students alike have general positive perceptions of technology. So we need to take advantage of these positive perceptions in terms of learning how to use new tools, in terms how to deal with technological issues, as Guillermo mentioned. So right from the beginning, the instructors need to set up a positive perspective for all technologies in the classroom, because otherwise we would be leaving behind all this optimism that Carla spoke about and all this freedom of choice and use that also Guillermo mentioned. So there is a need to set up a positive perspective for all technologies in the classroom, and also to introduce these digital learning environments right in the first session of the teaching period. And also not only to introduce them, but also to provide a safe space for live practice. That is to make mistakes, to let the students to make mistakes, to find all these issues, these problems, technological problems, how, in a sense, this safe space in the first session would set the positive perspective, and also would allow the students to try the technologies, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there is plenty of offering. If we think of video conferencing, there is more than 10 platforms. If we think of information repository, there might be more than 20 propositions out in the market. So instructors need to choose the bundle of technologies right before the teaching period, and to introduce them right in the first session. As a second recommendation, we propose to for instructors to identify the factors that foster and hinder the use of digital learning technologies in the classroom. As Carla mentioned, the optimism and innovativeness in students is very high if compared with the discomfort and insecurity they experience. But anyway, students may be experiencing negative perceptions on technology, and we need to identify them all. So instructors can focus on learning outcomes rather than learning technology, because if we choose, if as instructors we choose the easiest technology, we will learn how to use it very quickly, and then the focus need to be on the learning outcome and not learning new technology per se. learning technology just as a way to achieve the outcomes rather than allocating a lot of time. And also to promote the facilitating conditions of technology. Some conditions have very extensive, some technologies, sorry, have are very supportive. The knowledge database, the help section is very extensive, and just as long as we run into any problem, we can solve it right away. But there are another very interesting technologies that may not be promoting these facilitating conditions. So instructors need to focus on promote facilitating conditions of technologies. And the final recommendation is to take advantage. We found out something very interesting, that students' learning engagement in the online classroom resembles the physical classroom. That is, the students who were already engaged in the physical classroom have remained engaged in the online classroom. And on the contrary, those disengaged students previous to the pandemic remained somehow disengaged in the online classroom. So we need to conduct a previous assessment, or even in the middle of midterm assessment in terms of student engagement. This would allow to manage the online classroom just as if we were managing the physical classroom. So there are similarities. This insight was very interesting because there are similarities. This one in terms of student engagement, and the difference that the previous two recommendations are based on differences in which the online classroom is technology intensive. So based on these recommendations, we think we can add value. We can keep on adding value to the student experience in the living room, because because we switched from the classroom to the living room, and now there is a lot of people attending classes in the living room. So in this way, managing positively the technology and promoting the learning instead of the learning outcomes instead of learning technology, as well as managing the students' engagement in the online classroom, would enable instructors to maintain a high quality classroom. So we believe these recommendations lies at the core of our stories, because they are actionable. They are very they can be instrumented very quickly in an online classroom. So that's it for today. So thank you very much for attending our presentation. And I think right now we will start a Q&A slot. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate the presentation that you've had here today. And for everyone watching, you now can ask your questions in the Q&A box. We already have one question, actually, and it goes: Have you compared your results at the beginning of the pandemic and at the next stages, for example, at the middle of the pandemic? If yes, have you been indicated any differences in the results of your research?
I can ask that. We did not compare any. We collected all the data during the pandemic, during the lockdown. In fact, during April and May of the 2020. So we cannot make that things. We are planning to continue these studies, collecting new data in another aspect, but we have not yet.
Okay, great.
Because in Mexico we are already because in Mexico we continue during the lockdown. We have no classes, presence classes. We continue with digital, so we cannot we will not find any differences in that model because we are still in the same model.
Right. Okay, great. Now, next question. What type of digital technologies have Anahuac implemented to make it easy for faculty and practitioners?
Can you repeat the question, please, Victor? What type of technology?
What type of
Anahuac?
technologies have you implemented to make things easier for your faculty and practitioners in this instance?
At
Well,
our
we
business school?
at the
Yes,
school.
correct.
Okay. At the school, we well, the technology maybe we didn't implement it as a different technology, but we are using the technology as never before. Is that we used to use Blackboard in a prior and then different platforms, but we used to use it as complement, and now we are using as a full part of our classes, and everything is completely digital. So we maybe didn't change the technology, but we implemented as a complete or as a whole. Everything is happening on a platform that we use only as repositories of the information, not for a dynamics or the virtual classes or something like that. We didn't use anything of that in the prior stage. So during the lockdown, we use it very intensively. That's the change.
I would like to add that yes, we have like a lot of different platforms and different tools, technological tools that the school has provided us with, like Zoom and other different reading and tools and video, different platforms. But what we had found very interesting that it's like a bunch of tools for all of the professors, but not in a segmented way. And we have been, well, as an MBA director, I have been experiencing that some of my professors decided to use some of the platforms, and other professors decided to use uh, other ones. They started to segment I am starting to differentiate to find differences between some of the groups, some of the professors regarding the tools that they are using. So that's why the business school is providing us with a complete repertoire of different tools.
That actually opens up to a very interesting segue question then, because with all those tools, how can a school then create a coherent strategy where the learning experience doesn't differentiate too much? Because obviously with each tool, I mean, these can deliver a very different, let's say, outcome. So how does that then fit into the general, let's say, learning strategy at the business school?
Well, it's quite a challenge. I can get that question. It's quite a challenge, Victor, because it's not easy. It's not easy, but I think that the best way, or at least for us, is to have one LMS and try to have a coherent speech through this LMS, because you can find some of the tools that you will see that some of the tools can merge with the in the same LMS, and using so this way we can have like a more structured technological strategy as well. And another thing that needs to be considered is that almost of all of our courses have like a planning, an academic planning. So we use the same structure for that planning, so that way we start like creating a more coherent strategy, as you say. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's not only it's a challenge to have a coherent strategy for a course, a coherent strategy for the whole program, as well as a coherent strategy for the whole business school. So but yeah, I would say, like, to give two main results, or two main things that we're doing, it's a coherent technological strategy and a coherent academic and pedagogical strategy.
Right, right. Okay, fantastic. Now, if we take a step towards the research then, This was, of course, particular to Mexico. Is this going to perhaps expand to other countries as well that you may want to look at, or other institutions perhaps that want to do a study with you?
Well, in fact, we did it with the comparison between three different countries, that it's Spain and Malaysia and Mexico, and maybe we want to try. We are planning to collect the data using to understand how it's going to happen when we will be over the lockdown. So we are planning to, in August, finally we are going to give classes in not digital aspects. So we are going to try to do this, and to compare with different institutions and to compare with different countries in other regions. But it's just a plan. We are not just right now collecting data or something like that. I don't know if.
Great. Okay. No, it's just out of curiosity in case you had any countries or any schools in specific countries that may actually want to partner up and further this research. Now let's talk a little bit about then the outcome. You had the recommendations. How have you guys at Anahuac then acted upon these recommendations yourselves? What are some action points that you put forward?
Okay, okay. If I may answer that, Victor. Some points, as we were mentioning, to take advantage. One very subtle action point would be to take advantage of the positive perceptions on technology that the students and instructors alike they have. So in a sense, according to our research, students were very optimistic about using technology. So and they are very optimistic in a broad sense in the use of technology, and they are the innovative ones. I would say that the laggard ones are the instructors. So as long as the instructors adopt a new technology, students will follow out almost automatically, I would say. But as long as instructors are laggards in adopting technologies, students won't also adopt this new technology. So in a sense, the leverage is we need to leverage the instructor's side in terms of technology adoption. And as Guillermo was saying, this is all of a challenge, because when we all started in this research, we found out that instructors were using a lot of different technologies. Even in Malaysia, one professor was using WhatsApp as a channel to assign homework, for example, and some other professors were using WeTransfer, for example, a platform to very quickly transfer files through the internet. And even other professors were not using the learning management system at all. So they were only relying on email, on simple mail. So the action point, the first action point would be to promote the positive perceptions of technology.
Yes, I would like to add to answer to the answer that Pablo just gave us, is that we know that we have that the professors need different things. No, each group of professors need different solutions, different technological solutions, and different type of support. So even though that we haven't been segmented the solutions, because that's a very difficult challenge, a very difficult and a very yeah, you have to do it like with a lot of carefully. It's a very, you need a lot I don't know how to say it, a very difficult way of conducting that type of segmentation. The business school has been very keen to give us like a lot of different solutions so that we can choose. They are not trying to imitate or to copy other institution solutions or other different type of schools in order so that in order to find a correct solution, a perfect fit solution for the professors. So that's something really cool that they've been like listening to us and trying to respond to us in a more personalized way.
Great, fantastic. Here we have another question. Carla mentioned differences in culture between Mexico, Spain, and Malaysia. What is the main difference in Carla's opinion, especially in case of Malaysia?
Okay, the difference that we can found are according to the impact of the effects. Maybe the principal problem is how the teachers teach during the classes and the perceived aspects of the students. The main difference of the between Malaysia and Mexico, for example, is on the optimism over the performance expectancy. So the optimism has this part that are very maybe not optimistic with the how they are going to perform the classes or something like that are very important. And in the case of Mexico, the optimism is more it's higher than in Malaysia. And in Malaysia, they are most more they pay attention on the technology impact. So maybe the difference are how do they perceive to be more optimistic or the barriers as a technology usage. They are more discomfort than optimistic over the uses and the usage of the technology. That was the most important differences in our study. And in the case between Mexico and Spain, there are very small differences. Maybe they non-significant differences, but in the case of Spain between Malaysia, they also have the differences between this part, the positive over the technology acceptance.
Lovely.
So we can conclude that they are less optimistic than Latin American or something like that.
Yeah, there's a follow-up question to that. Do you think it's possible to reduce the difference, and what does it require?
Maybe it's difficult to say because the moment that we were living in that stage was very complicated for everyone, and maybe we have to in order to say that they are not optimistic or something like that and to change, we have to be very careful in the moment that we collected the data. Maybe in that specific moment, the emotions that they were living, we are not measuring in, are different because they began the lockdown before than in Mexico or something like that. So the feelings could be different, and it's not we cannot assume that all the feelings that they had in that moment could be enough to say that we have to change it. But we can try to, or we can recommend to work in the positivism of the usage of the technology, and not as just mandatory aspect.
Lovely. We don't have any more questions on this end. Do you guys want to have let's say a concluding remarks or anything else you want to leave the audience with before we close for today?
Maybe Victor just add that it's important for the design directors and all the people, the design directors, to understand that the solution and the technology and the tools need to be specific for each type of professor and for each type of student, to understand that there are differences and that you need to and that's important to understand the positive and the negative differences that everyone is experiencing in order to have a solution that a better solution. That would be it.
Great, fantastic. Well, then that's it for today then. And thank you so much to the three of you for wanting to participate and share your research, which has been very interesting to see. For everyone else, we run these webinars on a monthly basis, so do keep your eyes open for the next one, where we will be focusing on the next piece of research by one of our member and accredited schools. Once again, thank you so much for today, everyone, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.